Good morning, everyone. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Genna, and I am the newest So Fun manager. And today I'm going to talk to you about a really awesome project called Totally Awesome Tie-Dye. In July, we featured tie-dye and the tulip tie-dye kits, and I was so excited about what they showed during those classes that I really wanted to take it a step further. When I pick things that I want to teach about, I always try to pick items or classes that I have not done myself before, and I have never tie-dyed before. And so this to me was like a really fun way to learn something new, and also to put myself in your shoes if you've never tie-dyed before either. So I'm going to answer some of those questions that you might have. But if you have any, feel free to leave them in the chat and we can answer them as we go. So some of the first things that I was worried about during tie-dye was like, what do I do? Where do I start? And so the first thing that you really want to think about with tie-dye is, how does tie-dye work? Well, what tie-dye does is the dye actually binds with the alkaline in natural fibers. And why that's so important is because you want to make sure that when you pick your projects, they are made from natural fibers. So cottons, rayons, different fabrics like that. And so if you choose something that's more polyester or silk or something that's not as natural or high in pH, there are things that you can do, such as like a soda ash wash, but the colors aren't going to be as vibrant. And so that was something just to keep in mind when I was picking out my projects for what to do. And what I really loved with this Totally Awesome Tie-Dye book is it actually took you through how to pick out your projects and what to do. It's full of pictures. It's really, really vibrant, and super easy steps, so you don't feel like you're overwhelmed at all. And so I took some time, I picked out my projects. So I have some shirts and some onesies and some other goodies that we tried. And the first thing that you want to do with your tie-dye projects is soak them in water. And this just helps bind the dye to the fabric. And you want a rubber band or go through in here. They have a ton of different styles. That's ombre painting. You can paint it, or different ways to bind them. And I'll go through a couple of those here in a moment. But so as I was sitting home starting to pick out my styles that I was going to do and binding them, my teenage daughters came out and they were like, oh my gosh, you're tie-dyeing. I need to join you. Well, this is really exciting for me because my teenagers normally do not join me for any sewing or any crafting stuff, but they were excited. And so for me, this was like an extra bonus because I spent the whole afternoon with my kiddos, which is like miraculous, not on their electronics, but literally sitting there crafting with me all afternoon and giggling and laughing. There was not one argument to be had that day. So that's huge for us. So I'm going to start going through some of the projects and I'll show you kind of the steps that we did as we went through. But the very first one that we chose was this Crumple dye. And I loved the look. It's kind of like a galaxy look, if you can see that. And so we tried it. My 12-year-old wanted to try. And so this is her shirt that she dyed. And the great part about this is literally you take the shirt, you crumple it all up like this, you grab some of your rubber bands, and you just band it. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and it comes out however it comes out. So it's really fun. There's no right or wrong way. So she, at that point, put on her dye and then soaked it. And after you finish every project, you'll put it in a plastic bag to store it while the dye sets.
So did you put it in water first and get it wet before you banded it all up and then you put the dye on?
Yes. Okay. So with all projects, you will always want to soak your white or whatever color your item is first and have it really wet before you put the dye on. Except for there is one type of tie-dye that is called muck dyeing. And muck dyeing, or ice dyeing, is another term for it. And that is where you will take a bucket, similar to like this. You will put your item down, and I will actually show you because we did one. This one was muck dyed. And what you do is you, in this case for this one, you actually take it, you pick out where your lines, wherever you want your white lines to be. You would crumple up along those, and I'm just kind of pinching it together. Again, there's no right or wrong. You put a rubber band there. In this case, I did 3. So you can see there's one line there and there's one line here. And then you put it in the bin. You cover it with ice, which sounds so weird, but you cover it with ice. And then at that point, you just let the ice melt. You let it sit. The longer you let it sit, the better, but at least 8 hours. I let mine sit for 24. And then you rinse it out. And then you have this beautiful.
So at what point in time in that process did you add your dye? Because you said that you crumpled it up and you put your ice in, but when did you add your dye?
What, you put it right once you put your ice in, then you put your dye on. So there's 2 ways that you can do it. If you ice dye, you use the normal liquid dye that you would shake up like this. If you muck dye, instead of mixing this together, you would just scoop in the bottom. You can't see, sorry. In the bottom, there's powder in there. So these ones, you just fill up to the line, super easy, shake it up, go, it's ready. But if you don't want to use the liquid, you would just scoop the powder out, place it on top of the ice, and that's what gives you the random colors, because as it melts through the color, it then mixes with the dye and creates random colors. That one was really fun. So that is one technique that you can use, and actually I'll pull that up since I already talked about that one. So another one that we really liked and wanted to try that's in this book is the pleat. And what's great about this one is you don't use any rubber bands. And so this is probably one of my favorites. It's a cute little onesie. And literally all you do is you go pleat, pleat, just every about an inch or 2. They do 2 inches on the book just because it's a bigger shirt. But so you end up with like an item that looks like this, and you apply your dye and you let it sit. And so no rubber banding or anything, but I really loved the effect that I got on this onesie. All right, so the next one that I have here is the tri-colored, and that's this guy. I love this one. I just didn't have the time to do it, but is the tri-colored, and I just can't stop at 3 colors. So I added a little extra, but same thing. And what's so fun about this is it's super easy. You just literally do your rubber bands in your sections that you want. And so this one had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections, and then you put blue, yellow, and they bleed together to make that really pretty ombre kind of mixture. But you just, super easy. And then, so after that, we have, and that one, not that one yet. This one is called the folding technique. And I really loved the star and how that looked. And so I thought, well, let's try and see if we can get that method. But as you can see, my star looks more like a circle, and it looks a little better on the back. And I think that for me, what ended up happening, or what went off there, on this one, you fold it in half. Then you take this piece here and fold it in to create, and I'm sorry, I'm not showing it very well, but to create your edge there. And again, you fold this one to create a tucked in, and normally it would show up a little better here in this, but you fold it. And what was weird to me is they use chopsticks I didn't have any extra chopsticks, but I use 2 pencils. I have a ton of pencils around the house. You take them like this and rubber band them on each side. And as you can see, that first line right there is where I had those pencils. So where I went wrong was I didn't realize I needed to have the pencils in a certain position. So that's why it looks more like a circle instead of a star. But that's the great part about learning is you just, learn as you go, and next time we'll have a star instead of a circle. All right. So then the next one that we thought we'd get a little dangerous and try something a little different. I really loved the look of this folded technique. And so we did the same technique as that, but we just used blues and greens. And I thought this was so cool. And what's fun about this is it's one of the easiest ones of them all because you literally just fold it in half, fold it in half again. Now, when you're doing this, one thing I will say is you want to make sure that your lines are really nice and creased. You don't want to have wrinkles in them if you're looking for something that's exact like this, but I'm not doing a great job of doing that right now. And so then all you do, and you can actually start to see it as I fold it up, you just fold it up into triangles, and you'll start to see where those lines were as I folded. And so you just keep going in a triangle all the way up. And that, when you die, that is what gives you those exact lines because you're just dyeing on the edge. So this one was really a lot of fun, both for me and the girls. Now this last shirt that I have here, it looks a little crazy. I really like the way that it came out, but this is one where my teenagers said, oh, forget the book, we're gonna go off the rail and do our own method. And so what they did, they really wanted to try the pleating. And so they pleated all the way up the t-shirt. And then as they got to the top here, we're gonna keep going. I'm gonna straighten this out a little bit. As they got to the top, what they did was then they took this, flipped this to the middle, and rolled it. And that is where you get, when they dyed it, they only dyed in certain areas. And so that's why you have on the inside or the bottom so much less dye, and it just gives you that really cool look at the end. I kind of thought it looked kind of like a spine on the back here. Looks kind of different, but they really liked it. And so now we did say tie-dye shirts and more. So I do have, we went a little crazy because we thought, why not try to have more items? And I got to thinking about, well, what more could we do? And one argument that we always have in the house is who left their towel on the bathroom floor? Because nobody wants to claim it, and somebody always leaves it. So I thought, well, great, we'll tie-dye some towels, and then we'll know exactly who did whose. And so we have some great examples of towels. Now this one, my daughter just did the crumpled. She crumpled it all up and just kind of like put a little bit of dye wherever she wanted it. So it just looks a little hodgepodge, and I kind of like that it looks a little different. And then we have, so my middle one really likes a lot of like lines and fashion, and she likes to have things a particular way. And so she made her towel and her hand towel matching. And she did the same technique as she did on the shirt, but she applied more dye, so it soaked into it a little more. So here is her hand towel. And here is, I don't know if we'll open it all the way, but here is her towel. And what's great is she just did the pleating all the way down and then rolled it up like that, and she got some really great colors. I was really excited to see how from the three, because this comes with a pink, a yellow, and a blue, but those were the only three colors we used for all of these projects. I was really excited to see how many colors you could make by mixing them. And so this, the colors came out really nice and vibrant in these towels, probably because they're 100% cotton. So that might have helped with that too. And then for my youngest daughter, she wanted to really try the mandala, and they have that in here. Sorry, let me grab that. They have that, right here, sorry. So they have how to do that in here. Now they recommend doing it on a larger piece of fabric or something a little thinner because you need to have these lines really creased. And so we knew that there was a chance that it wouldn't turn out quite as crisp and clean as that one. But I thought we got a pretty good result. So you can see there in the center where it came out here. Now, if you had something that was really thin, like if you wanted to create a big piece of a mandala to create a quilt block or something like that, you could dye your own fabrics and you could do that type of look if you had something that was a little thinner. A towel's just really thick and lofty, so it doesn't quite crease as well as you would like it. And then for our last item that we did, one of my girls asked to tie-dye her pillowcase. And so she did the folding method, and she really loved how this turned out. And it's just a fun way to customize something that we had this in our closet forever, and we wanted to breathe some new life into it. And so this was a fun way for us to do that. And again, this literally, you can see my fold lines here, and just fold it up. And I'm gonna fold it this way, and you put your pink dye, yellow, blue, and then they kind of all bleed together to create that. And that's why you have the lines, because as you open it, you'll see that the dye just filled in on the edges. So that was a really cool and fun way to do that. Now I learned a lot doing this. The first day I did really good. I had some really great advice of make sure you wear gloves. And I did great while I was dyeing. And then I realized I took them off and went to go get the Ziploc bags to put them in, and started putting them in the Ziploc bags, because once you're done dyeing, you need to put them in a Ziploc bag or a storage container to let them sit for 24 to 36 hours is really the best, a long time. Well, I'm putting them in the bags, and I look down and my hands are blue. They are really blue, and I luckily got most of it out, but you can see my fingernails are a little bit still blue because those were dyed. So tip number one is gloves, gloves, and more gloves. And even with the process of once they've sat, you're going to rinse them out. You're going to rinse them out until they run clear in a sink. So you want to make sure that the sink that you're doing that in is not a plastic sink, because like in our washroom by our laundry room, we have a great sink that I use to get stains and stuff out of the, green spots. But dye kind of seeps into that sink if you have lines. So you want to make sure that your sink is not plastic. But make sure you're also wearing gloves then, because I'd gotten all the blue off the first time, and when I rinsed them the second time, I got some more back on. So that is another thing that I would say.
So Lori wants to know, does the color run or fade when you wash them?
There is a chance that they will fade the first time that you wash it. Obviously, that colors fade over time. If you wash it, 50 times, something's going to fade a little bit, but they do actually stay very well. But the first time it does definitely. So when you wash them the first time, you want to make sure that you're not putting anything other than dyed pieces in there. My other tip that I will say is when you wash them for the first time, you want to make sure that you're putting light colors with light colors. So if you're like, let's say you have a batch of pink items that you've dyed and you have a batch of blue items that you've dyed, even though the water's running clear, you want to wash those separate because there's still a chance that if you wash them together, you might end up with some purple items at the very end. So just make sure that you're doing light colors. We washed all of these together because for the most part, they're all kind of rainbow and different colors. But I was concerned, like with lighter, my lighter onesies, like this one, but it washed out just fine and came out okay. It didn't end up with pinks or blues or any other colors. But yes, it will stay because it's binding with the pH in the actual fibers. It becomes part of the fiber. Okay, so then the other thing that I will recommend is just making sure that as you store your items, you're storing them in just a spot that isn't accessible. It's just kind of out of the way. And why I say that is I have a pup at home who I had mine in a bag on the laundry room floor in a grocery bag just sitting off to the side, and he got them and started getting into the bag. So he ended up a little blue on his nose, but we were able to clean it up. But just my little note there, like just make sure that wherever they're sitting, because sometimes the dye does leak out of the bags, Ziplocs aren't 100%. And with some of my projects, because they had pencils, if it has any sharp points, or chopsticks, if it pushes through the bag, you just want to make sure that you don't damage anything else because it's dye and will dye your other surfaces. Again, we used the Totally Awesome tie-dye. So this is on our website, so you can order that there. And the Tulip tie-dye kit, again, I was super excited with how easy it was to use. It does come with gloves, but it's kind of like the hair dye gloves. You don't want to use those, believe me. You end up with dye everywhere. So you can use those. I recommend getting your own just latex plastic gloves or whatever plastic gloves you use. And then this is on the website as well. But if you have any questions, please feel free to post them here and we'll answer them as they come. Again, you can find these on qualitysewing.com, and we'll see you next time.